From the jump, Disney's live-action Snow White remake felt like a coin toss, either a bold triumph or a jaw-dropping disaster. And let's just say, it flipped the wrong way.
The movie that nobody wanted to see, and I mean that seriously, nobody wants to see this movie. Ticket pre-sales are nowhere near what Disney was hoping for. Let's just say if you wanted to buy tickets for the 9 p.m. show tonight, wherever you are in America, you'd be just fine.
For years, Disney has milked its animated classics for every ounce of nostalgia, rebooting old tales with modern flair. But this time, something felt off. As soon as behind-the-scenes whispers started leaking, fans were side-eyeing the whole thing.
Now, for Disney, as you probably remember, all of this publicity, the Zegler interviews, the Daily Mail leak, caused a lot of unexpected, for them anyway, pre-production problems. People weren't supposed to see and understand just how unwatchable the new Snow White was going to be. It was supposed to be, kind of a surprise, but now there was no hiding.
People immediately clocked how far the film strayed from the heart of the original 1937 masterpiece. The charm, the magic, gone. Replaced with something that looked more like a corporate woke checklist than a fairy tale revival. Fans weren't just disappointed, they were offended.
And now she's trying to reinvent herself because there's been so much blowback, and you can only imagine the studio calls about this woman behind the scene like, oh my God, we're $242 million in, and our lead actress hates our film, our actors, our storyline.
And when the movie finally hit theaters, the worst fears came true. Critics and fans alike ripped it apart. The box office, a complete embarrassment. This wasn't just a flop, it was a full-blown disaster.
It had the lowest opening, under 50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Meanwhile, poor Bob Iger had just come back from retirement to fix Disney's mess, only to walk into a PR and financial hurricane. Theme park attendance was dwindling, streaming ventures were bleeding money, and now Snow White, the jewel of their reboot crown, had detonated in their faces.
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP.
Despite starring the likes of Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, the film instantly became the butt of jokes online. What was supposed to be a nostalgic homage turned into the symbol of everything fans hated about modern Disney.
So now, as the movie comes out, the two biggest stars in this movie can't stand each other to the point where they can't be in the same room, which forced Disney, in their infinite wisdom, to cut back on doing a formal premiere.
A total collapse for a story that once defined the golden age of animation. The backlash? Brutal. Fans slammed the bizarre reinventions of key characters and plot points, claiming the studio butchered a legacy.
The latest victim of really bad ideas is finally here. The magical Disney DEI woke equity version of the 1937 classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But because the word dwarves is now apparently controversial, Disney took that part out of the movie altogether. And now the movie is just called Snow White, which would be like Disney taking lions out of Lion King or mermaids out of The Little Mermaid.
Well, from changing the dwarves to rewriting Snow White's very essence, the film alienated its most loyal audience. People weren't just upset, they were enraged. What they once loved had been repackaged into something unrecognizable.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
And on top of the creative changes, the visuals didn't help either. Critics dragged the movie for its boring direction and lifeless cinematography. It looked and felt like a project without a clear soul. At the center of it all, Rachel Zegler. She had the talent, she had the spotlight, but she didn't see this storm coming.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting, maybe, in the history of the film industry.
The scale of the backlash shocked everyone. Insiders spilled that Disney quietly started pulling Zegler from other major projects. Word on the street, her rumored voice role in Toy Story 5, gone. Codename Spiral removed. Then came whispers that she'd been dropped from the Pirates of the Caribbean reboot too. The project was already shaky, but Zegler's sudden disappearance became the headline. People speculated the reboot would be scrapped or rewritten again.
Disney is having its own problems. They're finally releasing the latest adaptation of Snow White, but they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
She's a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
To make matters worse, Zegler's public comments during the actors' strike poured gasoline on the fire. She boldly said actors should be paid every time their films were streamed on Disney+. And let's just say, the internet did not react well.
I say, if I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed.
Some called her entitled, unrealistic, detached from Hollywood reality. After all, the industry has never operated on a strict pay-per-click model. And while yes, many agree change is needed in streaming compensation, her tone, way off.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Well, then came another self-inflicted wound. Zegler revealed she had to wear the Snow White costume 16 to 18 hours a day. Now, sure, that sounds rough, but seasoned actors and crew weren't buying the pity party. Long hours and demanding wardrobe are the norm in big-budget films. Instead of sympathy, she came off as ungrateful.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and...
Things went from bad to worse when Zegler tried to defend the film. She called her portrayal of Snow White the best and bravest ever. Oof, that hit hard for fans of the 1937 classic. They saw it as disrespect, a dig at a film that helped build Disney's empire. Even fans of other versions like The Grimm's Tale or Kristen Stewart's darker take felt dismissed.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts like her life is so bad.
I truly do believe that there's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable. Like the majority of people in Hollywood, they're just not stable human beings.
It all added up to one thing. Zegler seemed to care only about her version of Snow White. That rubbed people the wrong way. Soon, the whispers got louder. Other studios were allegedly backing away from her too. Word spread that Blumhouse Productions had axed her from a planned horror trilogy. And Warner Brothers? Rumor had it they dropped her from a political thriller where she had a key supporting role.
Sweetie, you're being paid $25 million and you're on TV saying your bosses suck. So Rachel Zegler, maybe keep your mouth shut.
Now, Hollywood projects fall apart all the time. Budget issues, creative shifts, you name it. But when it keeps happening to the same actress, people notice. Zegler suddenly looked like a risky bet.
I don't really care what happens with this movie. I really hope her career is pretty much over. I'd be thrilled to see that. I can't imagine. I mean, Christian, you tell me. But is she not seen as box office poison now because of all of her antics?
It's kind of a mixed track record. She's still fairly young. Her West Side Story debut was not a hit, and that was a Spielberg movie, so that was kind of a surprise. But if you're a studio, if you're a director, if you're a casting director, you've got to think twice or three times before hiring her. Listen, she's talented, she's attractive, she's got skill, but there are a lot of actresses in Hollywood who bring all that to the table and are not going to absolutely sabotage your work. She was plucked out of obscurity by Steven Spielberg. All you say is thank you, Mr. Spielberg, and you keep saying that for the next 50 years.
Online commentators had a field day. They placed Zegler in the same category as celebs like Robert De Niro, Alec Baldwin, and Meghan Markle, stars who had spoken out boldly and then got slapped with backlash. But here's the thing, Zegler's just starting out. She doesn't have the long resume to weather this kind of storm. Back at Disney, Bob Iger was scrambling to contain the damage. Snow White wasn't just a film, it had become a cultural battleground, and Disney caught dead in the center.
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP. Why not write some new movies? You guys sit around, you have billions of dollars, they keep going back and rewriting the class.
Despite their best spin, reality painted a grim picture. Zegler hyped the film on social media, calling it the #1 movie in the world, but fans weren't buying it. The receipts, box office numbers, told the real story, and it wasn't pretty. Marketing didn't help either. The TV spots? Cringy. One ad showed Dopey yelling that people were rushing to theaters, while the dwarfs waddled like they were half asleep. People roasted it immediately.
Disney, despite losing over $1 billion on their last 4 movies, as they continue to shove woke politics into people's faces who just want to go to the movie, laugh, cry, and go home. Look, people don't want to be lectured when they're watching a movie, and they certainly don't want to be told that they're bad people. But that's what Disney continues to do.
For loyal Disney fans, it was heartbreaking. The studio that once defined storytelling magic now looked completely lost. The backlash wasn't just about Snow White anymore, it was about Disney's whole direction. They were accused of caring more about messaging than storytelling. Casting choices felt like tokenism. Beloved tales were being distorted, and audiences were done pretending it was okay. Still, Zegler stood tall. She praised the film and her version of Snow White. But her confidence? It came off as arrogance to some.
Now, one thing that is already universally known at this point by the general public is the fact that Disney is in full-on damage control mode.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Fans who adored the original felt betrayed. Instead of honoring past versions, Zegler acted like hers was the only one that mattered. That only made the rift worse. And perhaps the biggest lesson here? How fast Hollywood can turn on you. Zegler had been the it girl after West Side Story. Talented, charming, promising. But one project, one very public disaster, was all it took to flip the narrative.
Every Disney movie is about a woman waiting for a man, okay? Sleeping Beauty, she is comatose until a man comes to kiss her and wake her up. Rapunzel, she's up in a tower, taking biotin, hair vitamins, waiting for a man. This is what these women are
Cinderella.
doing. Is it the best? Yes, Cinderella. Is this the best message to send to young girls? No, but you don't have to rewrite and rework the classics. Come up with something new, you guys.
Let's pause here. The fallout, industry introspection, Bob Iger's uphill battle, and the raw reality of what this fiasco means for Rachel Zegler's future and for Disney. What happened with Snow White wasn't just another Hollywood flop. It opened the floodgates on everything that's wrong with how the entertainment industry is evolving. Streaming has messed up how money flows, actors are pushing back on outdated pay structures and fan bases. They've never been louder, angrier, or more organized.
This movie's cost them $200 million and counting. And instead of America being excited to take their families, I've got kids, we'd normally be excited to go see the remake of Bashful, Doc, Dopey, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, and Sneezy. Disney is looking at another woke flop with magical creatures instead of dwarves in a movie about 7 dwarves.
Disney counts on every big release to be more than just a film. It's supposed to launch merch lines, theme park attractions, sequels, spin-offs, and billion-dollar branding. But when a movie bombs this hard, all of that collapses. It's no longer about milking the success, it becomes damage control. And that's exactly where Disney landed with Snow White. Now sure, streaming might help a flop find its audience later on. But if the first wave of public opinion is brutal, that's it. The tone is set, and for Snow White, that wave was a tsunami of ridicule. Rachel Zegler's very presence online became a lightning rod, and in today's world, that's dangerous. Unlike the old-school Hollywood stars who were shielded by layers of publicists and controlled interviews, Rachel is part of the always-on generation. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. She's expected to engage, but that engagement can bite back hard. Even when stars are trying to be authentic, one wrong word can fuel a narrative that won't go away. And for Rachel, the damage was adding up. Instead of showing fans she was listening, every new post made her seem more out of touch. Add to that the endless cycle of online pundits, YouTubers, bloggers, armchair critics, picking apart her every move, and the negativity turned into a monster of its own. Even if Snow White had some redeeming moments, no one cared. The conversation had shifted completely from the movie to her.
She told Variety that I'm only responsible for what I feel, and then I'm responsible for how I act upon it, which makes no sense at all.
What started as buzz and excitement spiraled into bitterness and rejection. The spotlight turned harsh. And Disney, they were in trouble. Reimagining classics like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin had brought in billions before. But now, it was clear the formula was cracking. Not every beloved classic can survive being dragged into modern agendas. And when those updates feel forced or soulless, audiences push back, hard. That's what Snow White became. A case study in what happens when you mess with a legacy story without understanding the emotional investment fans have in it.
We've already covered how Rachel Zegler's a terrible choice for Snow White. Nothing about her says Snow White, and that's even leaving aside the fact that she openly detests the story, as she's said many times during this disastrous PR campaign. But Gal Gadot, who plays the Queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen. The evil queen is supposed to be envious of Snow White's beauty, and that is just not believable. It is just not, even in a movie with magical mirrors and dwarves and all that, in a fairy tale, that strains my ability to suspend disbelief. I cannot buy that Gal Gadot is angry that she's not as beautiful as Rachel Zegler. I cannot buy that.
Bob Iger knows how to steer the ship. He's the guy who acquired Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars. He's turned brands into empires, but the current landscape is a different beast. Streaming wars, economic strain, social media outrage that spreads faster than wildfire. Even Disney, with all its power and polish, isn't invincible. And Snow White proved that. As for Rachel Zegler, her future's now hanging in the balance.
Clear. I don't really care what happens with this movie. I really hope her career is pretty much over. I'd be thrilled to see that. I can't imagine. I mean, Christian, you tell me. But is she not seen as box office poison now because of all of her antics?
You know, it's kind of a mixed track record. She's still fairly young. Her West Side Story debut was not a hit, and that was a Spielberg movie, so that was kind of a surprise. But if you're a studio, if you're a director, if you're a casting director, you've got to think twice or three times before hiring her. Listen, she's talented, she's attractive, she's got skill, but there are a lot of actresses in Hollywood who bring all that to the table and are not going to absolutely sabotage your work. She was plucked out of obscurity by Steven Spielberg. All you say is thank you, Mr. Spielberg, and you keep saying that for the next 50 years.
She was the breakout star of West Side Story, dazzling audiences with her vocals and screen presence. But now, the headlines are all about what roles she's lost. Allegedly booted from a Blumhouse horror trilogy, possibly dropped from a Warner Brothers thriller, her early successes are being overshadowed by a wave of bad press. Of course, Hollywood loves a comeback. There's a long list of stars who bounced back after controversy or failure. But that all depends on Rachel's next move. If she can rebuild trust with the studios, reinvent her image, and, most importantly, stay quiet long enough to let the dust settle, she might still have a shot. But if she doubles down, if she keeps being seen as combative or clueless about how her own industry works, it might be too late. The entitled label is hard to shake once it sticks, and that's what makes the Snow White fiasco so explosive. It's not just about Rachel. It's about the intersection of so many volatile forces. Disney's legacy, Bob Iger's leadership, streaming economics, social media warfare, and the impossible tightrope young stars have to walk in the public eye. They call it the Snow White debacle now, and it's not just some footnote in Disney history. It's a warning, a cautionary tale about how fast things can unravel when studios underestimate their audience and overestimate their messaging. It's also a reminder of how deeply fans care about the heart of these stories. People are now going back to the original 1937 Snow White, finding comfort in the film that started it all. Others are rewatching Mirror Mirror or Kristen Stewart's Snow White and the Huntsman, movies that at least respected the core of the fairy tale even when they took creative liberties. Disney, meanwhile, is reportedly taking a long, hard look at not just the Snow White project, but the entire future of their live-action reboots. Are they chasing relevance or ignoring what made their classics timeless? As fans continue to voice their anger and disappointment, there's hope that maybe the studio will listen. Maybe they'll remember that these stories aren't just IP to exploit, they're emotional touchstones for millions. If Rachel Zegler does find a way to come back from this, she'll be a walking, talking example of Hollywood's ability to forgive. But if her star keeps fading, if the backlash never lets up, she may end up remembered more for this meltdown than for any performance she gave. One thing's for sure, both Rachel and Disney are being watched like hawks now, and in an era where one bad tweet, one tone-deaf interview, or one box office flop can destroy careers overnight, that kind of attention is terrifying. For now, Snow White will go down as one of Disney's rare but unforgettable stumbles. A PR disaster, a creative misfire, a financial mess, and a painful lesson in what happens when trust is broken between fans and the stories they hold sacred. Because when the fairy tale crumbles, all that's left is the fallout. Left is the fallout.